Welcome back to another episode, another school season of ShiftED podcast. We have a lifer Quebecer Montrealer, Joe Ortona from EMSB, chair of the governing board, and also president of the Quebec English School Board Association, and a real advocate for Anglo services and education within Quebec. And I asked Joe to come on here because I know he dabbles a lot with all of these bills and charters and amendments that are happening in our schools presently. And I thought it would be a good kind of refresher, or so that we're all on the same page and we start to understand a little bit better. I think knowledge is power, and Joe is going to share a lot of that knowledge with us today. So Joe, thanks so much for hopping on here today and taking a bit of time to share some of your thoughts and ideas about the English education system in Quebec.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
So Joe, maybe just to kind of build a little bit of foundation, like I mentioned, I mean, you grew up in the Montreal area. You've been a part of Quebec fabric for your career and your personal life as well. How did you come into the roles that you're in now, as the president of the Quebec English School Board Association, also the chairman of the EMSB governing board? How did those come to you?
Uh, to be honest, it actually first started kind of by chance. In 2014, people were looking for candidates to run, and had actually asked my dad if he was interested in running in a riding here in the East End in RDP, and he thought I would have made a better candidate, since there were a lot of young parents, young families that were moving in that area a little closer to my age. And he was really the first one who approached me about it. Prior to that, um, I had never given it any thought, to be honest. But it kind of intrigued me. And then as I learned about it, it was something that was interesting to me. And then I wound up saying, why not give it a shot, just to try something new. And it turned out I very much enjoyed it, and I've never regretted it since. And I went from being the school commissioner to eventually the chair of the English Montreal School Board, and then, eventually president of the Quebec English School Boards Association.
Amazing. And Joe, what's your drive behind English education in Quebec? Like, personally, like what gets you going about that, and the passion that you have for it is evident in our community. Can you explore a little bit of that with us?
Sure. I mean, my drive was, as soon as I started to get involved, I quickly saw that, our cultural identity is really overshadowed by the French-speaking majority in Quebec, and our identity is still important, and we still contribute greatly to Quebec society. We as an English-speaking community, we promote bilingualism, and we want to strengthen Quebec society, but also recognize that Quebec society is diverse, and we want to build on that inclusive society and ensure that the students that come through our system have those opportunities where they can become lifelong Quebecers, and be able to not only study here but be able to work here and be successful and fully bilingual, to be able to speak English and French proficiently.
Right, right. And are you seeing where, when kids graduate in an English school or in an English school board, what's the likelihood of them actually staying in Quebec versus going elsewhere? And like, what are some of the things that we could do in the educational system that would draw them to make them feel like to stay, rather than to decide, okay, I'm going to go to another province or another country, because our graduation rates are really great. They're up there. How do we keep those kids from leaving and wanting to stay here?
Um, that's a great question. A lot of that, however, that onus, goes to uh, the government of Quebec as well. I mean, our responsibility it's not to prevent English speaking Quebecers from leaving.
Right.
If they get opportunities elsewhere, and we want to be able to educate children who have opportunities all over the world, if that's
Hmm.
possible. I
Right.
think that that's great. What we don't want is uh, people leaving because they don't have any options here in Quebec. That's
Mm.
really
Right.
the concern.
Mm.
And what we do is, again, we ensure that we offer strong bilingual education. We have, great French programs that make it such that if anybody wants to stay in Quebec, they can. They can
Mm.
do their post-secondary studies in Quebec and then and work in French and be very successful.
Hmm.
The government has to do its part, however, in ensuring
Right.
that English-speaking Quebecers feel welcome and
Right.
feel included in Quebec society when the government talks about Quebec in general.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
that's not always the case, depending on which
Right.
government is there. But we certainly want to make sure that uh, getting an English education in an English school with a strong French program doesn't limit any opportunities and, in fact, opens as many doors as possible.
Absolutely. And we've kind of been seeing in the news as of late some of that struggle, right? That's coming, and kind of the over. I read somewhere where this new Bill 96, and correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of this extra blanket over Bill 101 that came out in the 70s, right? Like there's this more reinforcement almost of this protecting. And I understand that and I appreciate that. But again, like you were mentioning, it kind of puts us, the Anglophone community, I'm saying, um, in a difficult position at times when it seems like it's one way that the government's trying to, with their laws and their amendments and stuff. Could you kind of walk us through a little bit of Bill 96, which from what I know is now a law that's being contested? Can you like walk us through baby steps through that so that our listeners kind of get a better idea, and more versed a little bit in the repercussions of such, a bill?
Yeah. So there's a lot in Bill 96. It'd be really difficult to cover it in a couple of sentences, but
Right.
essentially, Bill 96 doesn't actually do anything
Mm.
to protect or promote the French language, and that's
Mm.
really the main objection we've had about it from day one. It should be what everybody objects to because uh, when we talk about what the main objective is of Bill 96, well, the actual bill, when you read it, doesn't meet any of those objectives. What it
Mm.
really does is it puts in very restrictive and punitive measures
Mm.
uh, on the English language to dissuade people from using English, to punish people, to bar them from, being able to go to English CEGEP, and that's really
Right.
where we take exception.
Right. Right. Right.
Bill 96 requires English school boards, for example, to have to communicate in French,
Mm.
including internally when we're writing, sending emails to each other, elected officials or administrators to their staff. I
Mm.
mean, I mean, anybody I speak to when I mention that just tells me that that's absurd. Of course,
Yeah. It sounds absurd.
there's stricter requirements in order to get into English CEGEP. They've added three core French classes for
Right.
students in English CEGEPs. They've set up enrollment caps for English CEGEPs, so that, basically is limiting educational pathways and choices that students have.
Mm.
So there's all of those things in which we take exception, and of course, something
Right.
that we've been saying for years on Bill 96 and Bill 21 and Bill 40, which is, English school boards are constitutionally protected. The
Mm.
government cannot tell us how we operate. They cannot tell us how to manage and control our school system. And
Right.
when they tell us the language that we're supposed to communicate in, when specifically language is the number one thing that is protected
Right.
for a minority language school board,
Mm.
then the government leaves us very little choice but to have to go to court to
Right.
assert our rights, which is essentially what we did.
Right. And you mentioning that too, like I know that the French system turned into centre de services a couple of years ago, and we're still recognized as school boards on the English in the English system of education. Where is that at right now? Is that still in court and going through, the cogs of legal
Mhm.
processes? And like, what's the hope of that? Like, what's the hope of, will we be able to maintain English school boards and avoid this shifting where the government seems to be much more in control of who is going to be in those schools running them, as opposed to the community bringing, electing the people that they want to see in those school boards?
So there's two parts to that answer.
Hmm.
Where we are um, legally,
Hmm.
and then where we are in practice. So legally, we're in a very good place. We as soon as the government passed Bill 40, which was their bill to abolish school boards, and
Right.
essentially did abolish all of the school boards on the French side and replaced them with a very undemocratic and bureaucratic
Mm.
school service center model. We were able to go to court and we successfully obtained a stay, which is like an injunction. It essentially means that the application of the law is suspended, and it was
Okay.
suspended for English language school boards. That was the case since 2020, and the government appealed that stay,
Mm.
and the Court of Appeal upheld the stay. And that's really
Wow.
remarkable
Yeah.
because stays are very difficult to obtain. The
Mm.
threshold is very high. You
Okay.
have to demonstrate um, that you would suffer, and you have to prove it, that
Mm.
you would suffer as a community an irreparable harm from the bill coming into effect,
Right.
and that harm is immediate and virtually irreversible.
Mm.
And we were able to meet that threshold, which is already rare in and of itself. But
Oh.
many times, when stays like that are granted, they're usually overturned on appeal. And the reason why I say that is because there is a general principle that governments pass laws to meet certain objectives. There
Mm.
are the you know they have they get to set their own priorities, and there's always that presumption that when the government does pass a bill, that it is constitutional. So the onus is on the person who's contesting. The
Right.
fact that we were able to get the stay maintained on appeal is something that has happened only a handful of times in all of
Oh.
Canadian history. So that gives you an
Wow.
idea how extremely rare
Right.
getting a stay and having it upheld on appeal
Mm.
is. And then we got the judgment on the merits a few years later, which again the government appealed,
Mm.
and which the government lost on appeal. So they lost
Okay.
four times in a row on
Wow.
Bill 40. Now they've asked the Supreme Court of Canada
Hmm.
for permission to appeal. We have not yet heard if the Supreme Court will allow the appeal to happen. They
Hmm.
may, they may not.
Hmm.
Obviously, if they don't, then that will be the end of the legal avenues, and
Mm.
we're going to be able to continue to operate as school boards.
Okay.
Um, in 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 theory, right? In
Right. Right.
practice, even if the courts side with us, we always have to make sure that we remain vigilant, and
Mm-hmm.
that the government will always try to claw back powers and try to impose their will. And we have to make sure that we remain vigilant, and we have to be diligent and make sure that when they do try to claw back, that we push back, and that we
Mm-hmm.
preserve the rights that are constitutionally guaranteed to us.
Right. And do you see a future where these ongoing battles might eventually be settled? And like, I guess my question is, what would be an ideal future for Anglo education if these, all these bills get settled, and like, what's the vision that you hope to see down the road for Anglo service English educational services?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, the 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 only thing that we could hope for, and what we should be striving for, is for the government of Quebec, whichever party it is that's in power,
Mm,
but that the government of Quebec finally gets it and
mm,
understands that when it comes to minority language public education, that they do not have the exclusive authority to be able to just impose whatever it is they want, without any limitations.
right,
Everybody
right.
remembers their history class and remembers the division of powers at the time of Confederation,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
Section 92 included education,
Right.
and it being of exclusive provincial jurisdiction. Um, However, we now, since then, have a Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We've had it
Hmm.
since 1982. And essentially, what Section 23 does is it ensured that there's a partnership
Mm,
in a shared jurisdiction. So what it means is the government of Quebec has exclusive jurisdiction on some matters in
hmm.
education, most of them,
Right.
French language education, private education, CEGEPs.
Hmm.
But when it comes to English language public education, there's a shared jurisdiction between the province and the English speaking community. And what that
Mm,
means is that the government of Quebec gets to decide some things. The
right.
English speaking community gets to decide some things, especially when it comes to, things that touch upon language and culture. And
Mm,
there's a shared jurisdiction. And so the
mm,
government has to recognize that we are a partner when it comes to
right.
public education. I mean, that's the ideal. And as long
Mm,
as the government doesn't get that, it's unfortunate, but we're going to find ourselves in court more often than not. And when the
right.
government doesn't respect the decisions that are decided by Quebec judges, then we have no choice but to do what we did in the latest court challenge on the
Mm,
budget cuts, which is to say the courts have already decided this, and the government is disregarding the law and the Constitution, and now we're seeking punitive damages.
wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I was going to talk about that too. Those challenges of, I mean, what is it? A $570 million cut in education. I mean, it seems like, and I'm starting to see the ground, on the ground level of, no opportunities for professional development, less teachers. Like, the repercussions are going to be felt big time, particularly for us who are consultants and we do workshops and support teachers and kids in their learning.
Yeah.
It puts us in a very difficult position to, how do we offer these services that we have for our community? Um, what is the hope of this lawsuit against this massive budget cut that we're going to experience this year?
Well, the hope of the lawsuit, if I can sum it up in one sentence, is to
Mm-hmm.
stop these cuts from actually occurring. That's one of the
Okay.
things we're seeking. We're seeking a stay now on uh, on the budgetary measures that the government wants to impose on us. So,
Mm,
they want us to meet certain caps when it comes to employees,
mm-hmm.
and they want to bar us from being able to use our accumulated surplus, which is money that we've saved over the years,
Right.
through you know fiscally responsible management and
Right.
control.
Right.
And so what we're saying is you can't do this, and that's why we're
Mm,
going to court because everybody understands, from the elected school commissioners to all of the staff, all of the pedagogues and the
mm,
parents. We all understand that if we had to meet the targets that the government was asking to meet, and cutting what they were asking us to cut, and adopt a greatly reduced budget,
hmm.
um, we would have to slash services that would have a detrimental impact on the
Yeah.
quality of education that the children receive. And a lot of services would be greatly reduced, and some
Right.
would be eliminated. So
Right.
it's very,
Right.
very concerning. Uh, all of this will most likely be decided within the next month because the courts
Wow.
understand that we do have to adopt the budget very soon. So they're going to make every
Right.
effort to ensure that that's heard and decided very quickly.
Interesting. And Joe, what do you tell your people that what can we do as an Anglophone community to support one another more in on these kind of, I don't want to say infringement, but it almost feels like that a little bit of how do we push back apart from lawsuits? I mean, is that our end goal? Is that things must go through the courts? Or are there things that we can do like parents and teachers to, assert our rights as Anglo citizens in Quebec and the rights that we have from the charter?
Yeah. Well, I know with the number of pending court cases that we have, it's easy to get the impression that we're running to the courts.
Mm,
But
mm,
that's not the case. We go to court as a last resort, and
okay.
oftentimes, um, we find ourselves in a situation where when we actually push back and we tell the government, we are not going to do this,
Mm,
that that they actually don't react at all. And so
mm,
the message that I always keep reminding my colleagues is they know we have these rights. They're counting on us either feeling intimidated from asserting our rights, or they're counting on us not understanding our rights,
right.
or necessarily when they apply. So we shouldn't feel afraid to
Mm,
push back when we know that we're right, and when we know that
right.
we're exercising our rights and powers,
Right.
that we have. So you know everybody in the English speaking community, whether you're parents of children currently in the system, or your children went through the system,
Mm,
or you're now grandparents of children in the system,
mm,
or if you don't yet have children in the system, and you're
yeah.
part of the just larger English speaking community, I feel everybody has a responsibility to
Right.
be involved. The schools are community hubs that belong to us. Everybody
Totally.
should be involved, understand what exactly is happening in education, because the decisions that are made that affect our schools, that affect our programs of instruction, are decisions that affect you today, and if they don't affect you today, they could affect you 10 years from now. So it's really important for everybody to be informed and to be involved, and to understand exactly what our Section 23 rights are, how
Right.
broadly they are to be applied,
Mm,
when they apply and when they don't, and be ready
mm,
to sometimes, when the government wants to let us know what they want us to do, we have to let them know uh, what we're allowed to do, and let them
mm,
know that we're exercising those rights. And more often than not, the government backs off without requiring us to
mm,
go to court. So those are the wins that are much less costly, but
mhm.
that happen much more often, but don't get talked about as much.
Yeah, totally. Joe, I just want to thank you so much for coming on here and making us all smarter about, our lovely community. I mean, it's a close knit community. It's a strong community. It has a voice. And we have to just keep using it, right? Like, as you said, like if we don't keep talking about it and pushing a little bit, they'll kindly take it. You know, like it's something that you have to voice and battle for a little bit. So I really appreciate this knowledge that you've shared with us about how all of this is um connected together. Really, I mean, it's all this web that's connected, and it's starting to make a lot more sense to me anyway, thanks to you. So thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
Always happy to help and answer any questions. And this, thanks for having me on again. This was a lot of fun,
Cool.
and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Amazing. I will definitely reach back out to you, Joe, when some wild things continue to happen. You
No
take care and have
problem.
a great school year.
Thanks. You too.